First thing in the announcements I want to remind you about is Mission Weekend. I mentioned it last week. If you were at church on Sunday, you heard Thomas talk about it. There are some handouts that Whitney provided that I put on the back table. They were also out in the foyer, so to speak. But feel free to pick one up if you're interested in serving on Saturday and joining in the mission-focused worship services on Sunday. Information on the handouts if you need any of that. A couple other reminders are, number one, this week and next week, our last meetings of the fall. We'll wrap up 1 Timothy next Thursday, and then the next Thursday, if you show up, it'll be Thanksgiving. There will be no one here except for turkeys, so don't show up on that Thursday. And then don't forget that exactly 1 month from today, on December the 14th, that is our barbecue fellowship at Harold Skaggs Ranch. You saw what your group is supposed to bring, hopefully on the email, and if not, your group leaders have told you about it. One question that Harold Skaggs asks is, who can make beans? Our bean makers are not going to be able to make it. So if you are interested in making beans or trying to make beans, please talk to Dr. Skaggs. He's the man dressed up here, looking all nice. All right, let's go ahead and stand and sing. Fall afresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. And me, fall me. Be God, fall fresh on me. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all that you do for each and every one of us. Thank you for these great men and men in the Word. Thank you for what you have taught us through 1 Timothy and continue to teach us both today and next week and in every day in our future. We bless everything in your name. Amen. So you can tell what I'm wearing today, or hopefully you can tell what I'm wearing because of the logo on the side. I'm wearing the New England Patriots. Why am I wearing the Patriots? Well, I know the Patriots aren't any good anymore, but did you hear about Bill Belichick? I know you've heard about the Dallas Cowboys. They're doing terribly. Dak Prescott is out for the season because of season-ending surgery. Mike McCarthy is on the hot seat. He's going to lose his job. Bill Belichick is going to be hired and replace him. Well, that's the rumor. That's the gossip that's been going around. Of course, I've also heard that Deion Sanders is going to be hired. I've heard. Yeah, exactly. There's so many things that happen, but lots of gossip. And luckily, guess what? That is our topic today as we talk about chapter 6, verses 1 through 10. So first of all, let's start off by reading the entire passage. Let as many bondservants as are under the yoke count their own masters worthy of all honor, so that the name of God and his doctrine may not be blasphemed. And those who have believing masters, let them not despise them because they are brethren, but rather serve them, because those who are benefited are believers and beloved. Teach and exhort these things. If anyone teaches otherwise and does not consent to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and to the doctrine which accords with godliness, he is proud, knowing nothing, but is obsessed with disputes and arguments over words, from which come envy, strife, reveling, evil suspicions, useless wranglings of men of corrupt minds and destitute of the truth, who suppose that godliness is a means of gain. From such withdraw yourself. Now godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing with these shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I want to go back and look at a couple of phrases, passages in this. First of all, let's go back to 3 through 5 and look at what he says about obsessed with disputes, and from such withdraw yourself. You know, we had an early warning about this back in chapter 1 many weeks ago, talking about false teaching and gossip, which is what we're talking about here is gossip, spreading talk that you don't know for sure is the truth, that you really shouldn't be talking about. What is it? It's meaningless talk. And false teachers in Ephesus, there were some false teachers there. They were advocating a doctrine different than the word of the Lord. And Paul was telling Timothy, this isn't to be done. Well, it's the same thing in what we do in our everyday lives, as we've been talking about week after week, that this corresponds to what we do day in and day out. Paul said, stay away from these people who are spreading this gossip back in the day. And it's the same thing today, because what we want is godliness. Remember that from chapter 3 when we talked about leaders and elders. Godliness is our goal. We're trying to get godliness. There's so many things to talk about gossip, but the big thing to remember is that I think knowledge is power. I'm one to believe in that. As a shy introvert, I listen a lot as opposed to speaking a lot. So I take in a lot of information, but that doesn't mean you have to pass along that information, especially when you don't know for sure it's the truth. Like Bill Belichick, don't go home and tell your wife or your family or anything. Guess what Mike said? It's a done deal. I made it up. It's on Twitter. People on Twitter say that all the time. What is social media? Social media is another word for gossip. It really is. And so many times these things happen. I'll tell you a story about that in just a second. But we have to put. You have to know that power can be dangerous, and when you feel like that's the power that you're having because of your knowledge, be careful. Because yes, it's good to have the knowledge, but be careful using it in the wrong way. I remember my first foray into gossip. I probably did something before then, but not that I remember very well, was in 1976. I was in 4th grade, and that was since we're talking with presidential elections have been the topic so much for the last several weeks and months. That was, of course, President Ford and President Carter, or future President Carter. But anyway, it's Ford against Carter, and everyone in the 4th grade talked about the fact that if Jimmy Carter becomes president, he wants to have Saturday school. We'll have to go to school 6 days a week. So everyone in the 4th grade in my class, hated Jimmy Carter because of that, all because of that gossip. Well, Carter won, and in those 4 years that he was president, never had to go to school on Saturday. So you just have to be careful with what gossip tells you. Let's go on to verses 9 and 10. And the big phrase there is, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. All kinds of evil. We got a hint in this in the Bible earlier, not in something that we've studied recently, but in Matthew 13, 22, the deceitfulness of wealth chokes the word. The deceitfulness of wealth chokes the word. You got to be careful with wealth because it can lead you down many paths because of greed. Because once you get money, you love making the money. I don't know if anyone's ever sold anything on eBay, but once you sell something on eBay, you want to sell more. What else can I sell? Wow, I can't believe I make $10 off of that. I bet I have something else in the house I can sell. Suddenly you get that $10 and like, maybe I can get 12 next time. Bring me more money, bring me more money. And you just have to be careful because of things like that. Again, you want to seek godliness more diligently than we seek money, which isn't easy. The godliness is tough when you're talking about two things that are so strong in our lives. I don't care if you're a man or a woman, but for us men, we men, seeking godliness is so much more important than seeking the gossip, the news, or the money. But boy, it's tough, isn't it? Because we want that information. And when we hear some possible information that may affect us, like going to school on Saturdays because of Jimmy Carter, we want more of that. Oh, tell me more. Tell me more. What? I haven't won a Super Bowl with the Cowboys in 30 years. Bill Belichick's won how many in that time? And now he's going to be the coach. Tell me more. Tell me more. Oh, Deion Sanders won a Super Bowl with the Cowboys and the 49ers. Look what he's done in Colorado. Now he's going to be the coach. Tell me more. Tell me more. It's hard to stay away from that, but we have to choose godliness over that information. And it's the same thing with money. I want to tell you a quick story about gossip that hits home to me because it's one of the reasons why I'm no longer a sportscaster. That back in 2018, in the summer of 2018, you probably remember, if you're a Longhorn fan at all, that in 2017, there was a sharing of the quarterback duties between Sam Ehlinger and Shane Buechele. And partly because of injuries and partly because of who was doing well at the time, but it was almost half and half. Ehlinger a little bit more than Buechele. Anyway, that summer, a tweet comes out. And what's another word for tweet? Gossip. A tweet comes out by one of the Longhorns, Brecken Hager, who puts a picture of Sam Ehlinger, and next to it, all it says is QB1. Well, one of my bosses at the station comes to me and says, "Did you see this? Look at this. Look at this. Sam Ehlinger's been named the starting quarterback for the Longhorns. You need to run with that. We need a story on the web, and we need a story tonight on the news. That is huge." It doesn't say that. It's his teammate. It's his friend. It's his former classmate at Westlake. They went to high school together, saying he likes him. It doesn't say that he's the starting quarterback. Oh, no, it does. He's got inside information because he's on the team. Look, QB1, you need to run with that. That is huge. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't air that story because it was just gossip. Yes, Sam was the starter that year, but nothing had been said yet. This is in June, before anything had happened, before they started practicing in August, before the season started in September. And I wouldn't run the story. And in my write-ups, I guess you could say, my discipline things that were written up over the course of the next 6 months, that was one of the things that was mentioned, that I wouldn't follow directions and run a story that wasn't true. And so many times, if you watch the news, which I don't watch anymore, but if you watch the news, it happens all the time where they see something on Twitter and it becomes viral, and all it is gossip. But they think it's the news. So that part kind of hits home for me. And I could tell you so many other stories about gossip. And again, being a shy introvert, and also the fact that because of who I was or who I am, however you want to describe it, that people often come to me with information, and I still have information to this day. People who have told me things through the years and still tell me today, just because of knowing them, and I have so much information in my head, but I don't share it because most of it is all gossip. Yeah, if I hear something that's true, I may tweet about it, or I may tell friends about it or something like that. But there's so much going on out there. I know so much about the current UT football team. I know so much about the current UT baseball team, the UT basketball team. So much stuff that comes in that I hear about. But if I was on the news still and talked about it, or if I told all of you right now, all I'm doing is spreading gossip because it's not factual things. You know, if I'm telling you something factual, that's one thing. But when all it is gossip, hey, did you hear about this, Mike? I hear that Schlossnagel may do this. I hear that Sark may be doing this. Like, okay, but it's just gossip. And we have to be careful with that. I could stay up here, what is it, 6:37? I could stay up here another probably 36 hours talking about gossip. Because I've heard so much. I could tell you stories through the years. I'm going to tell you one more quick story. This was 1998. Tom Penders has been, we'll say, let go as coach of the Longhorns. And one day I'm at work and my phone rings. This is before the days of most people having cell phones. My desk phone rings. I pick it up, and it kind of sounds like I'm making it up, but it really was true. Kind of a deep voice, kind of shady voice on the other says, "Barnes, I got to tell you this. It's a done deal. Rick Majerus has been hired. I just want you to know it's a done deal." Really? Yeah. I didn't want anybody else to know, but I thought you should know. It's a done deal. All right. I hang up the phone, tell my other sports guys, hey, he says it's a done deal, because they talked to the Longhorns, had been talking to Rick Majerus. They'd been talking to, what's his name, Bender up in Washington, different things. We have a scoop. This is great. What should we do with this? He didn't get hired. He wanted too much money. I hired Rick Barnes. But someone called me with that, even an insider, a big name booster calls me with that. But it still wasn't true. You have to be careful with gossip. You have to be careful with social media, because it can affect each and every one of us. I want to tell you a couple stories about money. And I know I tell too many stories about my dad, but this is about my dad. My dad, this is from his retirement party after 49 years at the same company. He started as an accountant, wound up being CFO for most of those 49 years. And he grew up in Dallas in a middle-class family, but when he and my mom got married back in 1960, they were dirt poor, and they didn't have the best of jobs yet. My dad didn't start working for that company until 62. He hadn't graduated from college yet when they got married. And they joked as my sister and I were growing up about how poor they were, about how they would live off 10 cents a day. That's what they budgeted themselves, and being an accountant, they really budgeted themselves 10 cents a day. And my dad would buy, or my mom would say, yeah, and he spent all of his money on a burger. He would buy a 10-cent burger on his way, or at lunch downtown, and my mom would spend her 10 cents on coffee and cigarettes. So luckily she stopped smoking in 73. Anyway, so because of that, he was always very, between that and being an accountant, he was very, I won't say tight, I will say careful with his money, protective with his money. Well, again, he rose through the company and got to be basically second in command as the CFO. Well, the company he was working for was a commercial real estate firm up in Dallas. It had a lot of interest in a Texas bank. So between that and the fact that many of you probably remember that commercial real estate in Texas didn't do too well starting in around the mid 80s. So, well, because of that, for about 10 years or so, my dad didn't get a raise. His salary stayed the same for about 10 years and didn't change. And my dad never complained about it, thought it was fine. It's all right. The company's trying to come back. We're doing okay. We're doing better, blah, 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 blah. Well, in the early mid 90s, the company hires a consultant for whatever reason. Anyway, hires a consultant to come in to see, what do we need to change? What do we need to do better? Well, the consultant comes in and watches them for, several weeks and gives them a report. And one of the things they say is, John Barnes needs a raise. He needs to be making this much instead of what he's making right now, which was a 25% raise. And my dad's boss, I think everything that the consultant said, the boss was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. So my dad got a 25% raise. Well, this is middle of the year. End of the year, my dad was always a little stressed in December because of budget stuff. And in December, he starts talking to my mom, and then my mom would talk to me about it. And like, I'm a little worried about dad, blah, 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 blah. He was worried because the year didn't turn out as good as they hoped. And he was thinking about giving the raise back. After going that long without a raise and getting that nice of a raise, he was thinking about giving the raise back. And that stuck with me for years and years and years. And in around 2008, when the economy here nosedived, well, the economy everywhere nosedived, we were told that layoffs were probably going to be coming. Mind your P's and Q's and don't spend very much money at the TV station, blah, blah, blah. And I went to my boss and I told her that story. I said, if I need to give up my raise, which was not 25%, I think it was like 2.5%, that was in my contract, I will. Because I know it'd be for the good of the company. I learned from my dad how important it is to choose godliness over wanting that money. And that wasn't the only story, the only time it happened for my dad. And I have to finish up with this one, is that a few years later, gosh, it's probably 2002 or so. I know both of my kids were around, so it was early 2000s. I'm outside, and I had a cell phone, so it was early 2000s. I'm outside and my cell phone rings before the days of iPhone. My cell phone rings. I was doing some yard work and I open it up and it's my mom. And she immediately says, "You need to talk to your dad." Well, my dad had already decided that it's getting close to retirement. I'm in my mid-60s. It's time to talk about retirement, but I don't want to step away yet. But I think I'm going to talk to the boss about only working 4 days a week and not working on Fridays. I think he'll let me do that. I'm going to do that. Well, he talks to my mom about it first and says, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to offer to give up like half my salary. And my mom's on the phone saying, "You talk to your dad. I want you to call him right now because I'm not giving up that money. That is crazy. I'm not going to do that," because he's wanting to give up this. So I talked to Dad and said, "Dad, you're an accountant. Let's think about it. You're wanting to give up 20% of your work time and 50% of your pay? Let's think about that for just a second, Dad. Does that make sense?" Well, he wound up giving up like 20 or 25% as opposed to the 50. But again, he was choosing godliness over the love of money, which we all should do. We all need to worry about that when we're talking about gossip, when we're talking about money. Learn from what Paul has taught us here in the letter to Timothy, because the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. It's so true. And having an unhealthy craving of controversy. So true. Gossip and money. Be careful with both. All right, let's look at some questions. Why do you fall into the trap of gossip or rumors or controversy? How has money engulfed your life at any time? And what needs to be changed to help you look at money in a better light? Thank you.